Hello, everyone. I first want to start off with saying please bear with me. It's my first time ever presenting. So if a couple of years go down the road and I get really famous, you might want to think about that beforehand and get my autograph. But for now, you guys can be my beta testers. How about that? Yeah, there we go. Today we're going to learn about WordPress, not WordPress, if that makes sense. So something beyond what it's even really been set up to do initially. So I hope to inspire your imaginations, get some aspirations, and really start thinking about the true power and potential of WordPress outside of websites and blogs. Some quick introductions. My name is Bimo. That's short for Ben Moore because Ben wasn't already short enough. Nicknames are never really picked. You just get thrown a nickname and then it sticks and you have to own it. Otherwise, I don't know what you're doing. So I'm Bimo. I'm currently the WP Engine Customer Experience Operations Business Intelligence Developer Level 2, to be exact. Or CXO BI Dev L2, if you really want to shorten that one too. I'm the founder, owner, and operator of SkyPress. It's a small little consulting agency that I'm trying to spin up. I currently have 0 customers, and I'm still working on the website, but it will be a thing, I promise you. My wife's going to handle all of our business administrations and relations. I'm the foo, she's the bar. It's clever, I know. And I like to think of myself as a student of life, and that really meaning that I strive to learn something new every single day. Because if you're not learning something new, then what are you doing with your life? You always got to keep growing, always got to keep building. Before we move on, my introductions are over, so I'm going to get to know you guys a little bit. Who here is a developer in this developer track? You build things, you write code, and you're trying to extend WordPress beyond itself. Sweet, that is most of you in the room. That's great. You are not a developer? You didn't raise your hands? So what do you focus on in WordPress? Support. Yes. I started WP Engine 4 years ago as L1 support. So I got you. I know you. Perfect. Well, that's going to help me tailor the rest of the slides a little bit better. But to set the stage right, I'm not doing a very technical, as in there's going to be code thrown up everywhere. We're not doing a huge live demonstration. I'm not going to connect to APIs on the spot. I want to focus more on the concepts, the keywords that we're using. As we know it, WordPress is not just a blogging platform, right? That concept died a long time ago. It's now a full content management solution. It doesn't have to be a blog. It can be video. It can be pages. It can be e-commerce. It's everything. But I want to challenge that it's not even just a content management. It is a web development platform. And when I say web development, if it can be on the internet, you can use WordPress for it. If it can display a thing, right? So we're even talking Internet of Things at this point. You can use WordPress for it, and that's fine. It's not the most popular route, but it's possible. And I want to try and get us building more with WordPress. More than just a site, more than a cat blog, more than here's my 4-page about my consulting agency, which right now my consulting agency is only 4 pages of a site, but more. And I want to focus on using these 3 technologies. Why WordPress? Why JavaScript? Why REST APIs? Because that's really where the future and the scalability and the movement of the internet is heading. In particular, why WordPress? WordPress has a very well vetted user management system. Who here thinks, let me ask, who here knows when Angular or Backbone was created, initially released? Yes, ma'am. Close, 2010, right? Angular is 7 years old, and in internet terms, that is old. Who knows when jQuery was first released? No? It's all right. Oh, in the back.
I want to say 2006.
Bingo, 2006. User roles and user management in WordPress was released in 2.0, which was 2005. So this system has been vetted over the last 12 years, and it is solid, accurately solid. 2.0 was the same time where a major feature release was being able to have a functions.php file in your theme, as well as the new WYSIWYG editor, as well as, and this is an honest release in the release notes, a little box at the bottom of the text editor that you can click it and resize the size of that text editor. That was major groundbreaking release right there, right? So it's been around forever. WordPress is also very competent at data abstraction. I read once somewhere put it very simply that WordPress is just a PHP wrapper for MySQL. And he's true, he's right. That's at its highest level what it does. It also does a lot of other great things. Theming. We all know how easy it is to write a theme, which also means that it's extremely extendable. So WordPress is solid. It's old, but it's been proven, which is why it's 28% of the internet. So why JavaScript? If WordPress is so great and so awesome, JavaScript is that front-end experience that WordPress isn't the greatest at. WordPress can build you an HTML file and send it to the browser real easy, but to start actually doing interactions, making your project more than just a site, but an application, you're going to need to use JavaScript. Say you don't even want to have to go to a browser. You want someone to download it on their phone. Well, we all know that's JavaScript too, and that's fine. JavaScript is powerful and interactive. And then lastly, why should we use the API? Because it's data. Data, data, data. I'm a business intelligence developer. I should be able to say my own title. I deal with data all day long. I've got a program running right now that pulls in hundreds of thousands of rows into a database every week. And then I go back through that, and then I pull it back out, and I report on it. APIs make my life easy. Other thing is, today, if you're trying to access something or trying to build something, and you want other people to access it too, you got to have an API. You got to have that REST API because not everyone is going to want to go to your site and just click through your links. They want to program and script out how they can scrape it from it and use it on their own. APIs are powerful. APIs don't care who's asking for it as long as you're authenticated. And APIs, they just work, right? They're tiny little footprints of information being passed around everywhere. There are 3 approaches I found on how to connect WordPress, JavaScript, and the API, and I've come up with a fun terminology for them, so bear with me. You can go limbless, you can go headless, or my personal favorite is to go brainless. Right? And now headless is really the only one that's actually exists. The other 2 I pieced together for uniformity. But this is how I've experienced it. Traditionally, you build a website. And I'm going to point out that everything in white right here is compiled by PHP on the back end, turned into HTML, and then sent back out. So you have a site, you say, hey, I need such and such. WordPress says, yeah, I can do that. So we wanted more than that. So we decided to start piping in some JavaScript, some dynamic components of our static site. So you might have your body just pulling in that. You might have a Twitter widget that's just pulling on your feed on the side. But there's one thing, as dynamic as these things are, that keeps happening. Just like this slide, every time you go to another page, the entire thing has to be rebuilt on the back. And that is where a lot of companies have spent a lot of time trying to fix through caching, through Varnish, through Nginx, just really not necessarily kicking a dead horse, but just fighting a problem that shouldn't have to exist. So essentially, you go to a browser, you go to a URL, You say, hey, I need this. WordPress says, I can do that. But to do that, I need HTML. So actually, my good partner over here, PHP, he's going to go get everything for me, pass back out some HTML. And included in that HTML is a little bit of JavaScript that's also going to go hit a REST API and pull in what I need. Still with me? Basic. My philosophy is to let the back end back and let the front end front. WordPress is very much an event-driven design pattern. And a growing design pattern is called the model view controller, where the model takes care of its place, the view takes care of its thing, and the controller connects the two. So that's database, that's templates, and the controller says, here's how you interact. That is quintessentially the back end doing its thing, the front end doing its thing, and the two being separated. So here we go. Here is something that's talked about a lot. There's a lot of how-tos on it, but I've always missed that educational piece of what it even is. We're talking about headless, decoupled. Essentially, notice how our little template here, it's all orange? That's all dynamic. That's you building it wherever you want, whenever you want, however you want. And you're pulling in the data from the REST API. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to use WordPress. You can pull in any available API that you have, or all of them, or none of them, or just some of them. It's just data. And you're responsible for doing things with that data. How does it work? You go to a site, JavaScript, or whatever front end you built, independent of everything, says, I know what to do with that. I need some HTML, and I'm going to build that HTML. I also, because I'm smart, am going to pipe in some dynamic content into it. And I need that content from an API. And that's that. And then that API on the very back, that server, it's just sitting there. It has no front end. It's not going to produce any HTML. It's just going to say, hey, you need 2 + 2, here's 4. It's just passing data. It doesn't have to construct anything, just return raw values. So headless, you're going to choose a framework, because let's face it, we're trying to build things, not learn how to program. Right? We have an application we have to get out in a week, and there are tools available to do it. So why not be more effective and efficient and use something that someone else has already spent the time building? So you're going to pick your framework. You're going to choose your host. And here's why it can get difficult, because if you have your front one place and your back another place, you might be paying for 2 different hosts. It's possible to do it all in one, but it just depends on the size of your project. You get the data from anywhere and everywhere you want, and then you control it. You're responsible for it. And it's just absolute freedom. It's like a kid growing up, and their parents tell them what to do, how to do it, so on and so forth. They still get to cut their hair the way they want, wear the clothes they want, but if they're at a slumber party, the mom's still going to pick them up in a minivan when it's all over, right? They have uniqueness and are individuals, but they are not independent. And then you go to headless, and you are now in your mid-20s, you have your own apartment, you have your own job, and you get to wake up whenever you want, you get to go to sleep whenever you want, and in between you can do whatever you want. And the world's just throwing stuff at you, and you get to interpret and do with it what you want, which is freedom as we know it. The bad thing is, you are now responsible for all of it. In this particular case with WordPress and headless, if you're doing it right, you are not using WordPress functionality. You are just getting data from WordPress. We'll go over that in a bit, but just let that sink in. The REST API is a function, but you're not using it. You're not working with it. You're just asking it for stuff. It's just data. My solution, Brainless. Brainless is this unique integration where the back end and the front end are 99% separated, 90% separated, right? It's still using the WordPress functionality that's there, embedded and secure and stable and trusted. But you stop WordPress right where you don't need it. And you notice our little template. We got this white dotted line all around it. This is what I'm calling an HTML shell. Then once JavaScript kicks in, you use it just like anything else. So it's just enough WordPress and just enough JavaScript to be able to mesh them together, but also keep their independence. So how does it work? Just like in Limbless, your very first page request, you say, I need about us. WordPress says I can do that. I need some HTML. PHP, my good buddy, he's going to get me some HTML. And PHP on the back says, yeah, here it is, but I really don't care what you do with it afterwards, so I'm just going to stop. I'm going to stop at this shell. And inside that shell is now my JavaScript. And it's more than just a call to Twitter. It's my entire single-page web application. This is where my Angular steps in, my React, my Vue. And then that calls your dynamic data. But what happens whenever you click another link and you go to another page, you're still running a full single-page JavaScript web application. So it just says, hey, I know what that is. I'm JavaScript. I know how to do HTML templates. I can pull that, but I need to pipe in some dynamic pieces to it, so I'm going to get that from the REST API. And then you don't have to reload your entire page every time you go to a new you know what I mean. So Brainless, you make a request, WordPress verifies it, you can localize all the content you need, you start enqueuing your scripts, you render your shell, and then JavaScript takes the wheel, right? After that, I'm done. I'm going to wipe my hands, and my payload from PHP is small, and JavaScript can do the rest. Some downsides to it, you can't make a mobile app using a Brainless solution, because mobile apps in their entirety are a quintessential example of what headless is. A mobile app means that my front end is living on every single mobile phone, mobile device, and that is now that server. And all it needs from me is the data. Brainless, you're going to build web applications where you go into Chrome and you open it up and it does everything great. You can have them running in tangent, but it's just a good thing to keep in mind. And secondly, you're going to have to be a little bit more proficient in multiple languages. As it turns out, if you need to build an entire API and an entire single-page JavaScript web app, and then also know how to marry the two in a very nice and efficient package, you need some experience in both of those. Also, just so I can throw it out there real quick, this works because I've been doing it. Again, hundreds of thousands of rows of data going through my BI project back at WP Engine, and that's running WordPress. That's running a Brainless solution. And it calls out to all of our service providers, all of our chat system, our phone system, our ticket system, our employee management system, and we're storing all that and then recalculating on it and spitting out reports. And that's all in WordPress. And I'm using user management. Even if they're authenticating with Google, they all belong to different departments and shouldn't see each other's data. So WordPress, you set up user roles. You can isolate exactly what you need. And there's a lovely framework I've been working on called the WAR API. It stands for WordPress, Angular, and REST API. And if you ever get a chance and you want to see what I'm talking about, that's where it is. Sorry, jumping around a little bit. Brainless, this is your PHP payload. Usually, right there in that middle, pointer time. Right there in that middle, that's where you're going to do your post loop, your page loop, everything else, and PHP is going to construct everything. With this, you're getting your scripts, your styles, and then right there, that's the money ticket where JavaScript takes over. So whenever it all compiles in the browser, that's all you're looking at. That's all the browser needs to know, and then JavaScript takes over. Not too bad, huh? Pretty small. All right, let's wrap it up some. Headless, you break it, you buy it. No WordPress functionality, just the data. If you're doing it right. And you are going to have potential to spend a lot of money between 2 different hosts or more. Brainless, you get enough WordPress functionality when you need it. You get the JavaScript where you need it. But more than just a Twitter feed, you can build an entire JavaScript app. And you just use the API, because I am in love with the API. I love it. It's great. And for people who don't like to read, this is a great visual representation of the 3 of them. Our cyborg here, it's that perfect combination of man and machine. Not too bad, right? I want to switch gears a moment, get a little deep, get a little philosophical. Because we're building outside of WordPress but using WordPress, there's no right way of doing it, unfortunately, and for the good. There's no right way of using Angular in WordPress. There's no right way of using Unity to build a VR app and pull in data from WordPress. There's no right way of setting up little Raspberry Pis in every single room that kind of use like that room number as the user and then comes back and logs all the data on your WordPress. There's no right way of doing it, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing it. It just means that we shouldn't think about technically how to do it, but rather what would WordPress do by following their own philosophies that they set in place a long time ago. We get to invent, and instead of following the guidelines, we get to write the guidelines, but it means that we need to be respectful of what WordPress is even really trying to achieve. And if we're following WordPress philosophy and using other technologies, we can follow those community guidelines and philosophies too, and really start merging best practices across many, many different channels. And to me, that is super exciting. So, my name is Bimo. I will be sharing these slides. There's going to be a video. Don't worry about that. Here's everywhere that you can get a hold of me. And I'm going to take this down for a moment and bring it back up because I want to show you in action what I'm on about Brainless. Unless everyone gets it. Does everyone get it already? Did it just sink in? Was that perfect? Was the best presentation you've seen all day? Please tell me so. Come on. Don't be shy, beta testers. Throw it? All right. This is a site. This is a page, a contact form, and in Limbless, this is kind of what you would use to submit your JavaScript back. And that's fine. That's beautiful. If it works, it works. So if we fill this out, Ooh. Hi-yo. There's our API call. Just like Rob was talking about earlier, your AJAX call, that's JavaScript saying, hey, I have an HTTP thing I need to do, send it out. And there it is. That's our API. And it gets back a response of 1. Perfect, because it's just data. And all that did was save a record in a database. All you need. That's beautiful. But now I want to go back to the home page. And if I clicked this, the whole thing should rebuild, right? It didn't. Instead, where'd it go? Oh, it was already loaded. Hey, there it is. So it's just pulling in those extra things, and that's JavaScript at work. JavaScript saying, all I need for this is my daybanner.html and an image. It didn't have to rebuild everything. It just got what it needed, which makes it faster. It also means that this is all you have to do, right? Here's what it looks like when you localize a PHP array, and it turns into JSON. And it pulls in your styles, it pulls in your JavaScript, and really the meat and potatoes of everything you see, that's it. And if that's all PHP has to worry about, PHP is going to be fast, especially if you're using PHP 7 and you have Varnish and you have Nginx and a whole boatload of caching, even faster. But what's great is that little blob, because of Angular, is really constructing all of this. Did you ever think it could be so much from that? But I'm still authenticated because I can take care of WordPress. I can utilize WordPress cookies and the nonce. I'm still getting my localized scripts in because I'm still using WordPress functionality. I can still do the good and then let the new hotness of JavaScript take over. That's all I got, and I am open for questions. Oh, this is great. I feel like I just blew all your minds, and you're just speechless right now. Oh, no.
Could you quickly summarize, like, I mean, I kind of get it, but I kind of don't, like, there doesn't seem to be much difference between the brainless and the headless, and so I kind of want you to just, like, focus in on just the difference between the two.
Okay. Headless version of WordPress will not return any HTML ever, at all. It should not, right? It stops at, what is it, template redirect, I think is the filter or the hook. That should never happen. The only thing a headless version of WordPress should return is data from the API. That's it. JSON blobs galore, but that's it. But that also means that all you can get out of it are JSON blobs galore. All you should be getting out of it. Brainless takes it just one step further where you can start using or keep using the valuable points of WordPress backend beyond just a JSON blob. But it stops just short of taking over the entire front end. It's that extra crossing of the middle ground without just taking over. And the value to it really comes down to using the best parts of each system. Let's go back to user authentication. With headless, you have to authenticate on the front, know who they are, and then pass it back to the API, which also the API needs to know who they are. So in essence, you have to authenticate twice, right? It's like being out to college, you meet a great boyfriend, and you want to bring him home for dinner, but the parents are saying, like, I don't know him, he's a stranger, I need to know who he is first, right? You know who he is on the front, but the back still needs to know. With Brainless, you are only authenticating on the back already. So the front and the back already know who the same person is, but that doesn't mean that the back is going to dictate what you can and can't do on the front. So it's removing just almost boilerplate code that's already been written 12 years ago. And it just seems better.
So how's that happen? Like, is it because you're getting the session cookie data at that point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are the valuable bits that you're actually so interested in when you're doing brainless?
This initial request goes straight to WordPress, and you get those logged in cookies out of it when it returns back. But then you also only get that. And you can still use WordPress for all of your style sheet and queuing, right? If you want to dequeue something that some other theme threw up, or you can still do parent and child theming. You can extend out the API even further with your own plugins. And WordPress will handle it, and this, and then just say, it's all I have to do. Because the next technology, JavaScript, is going to take over. And
so is JavaScript like
It can. In particular,
You won't see it if you do the source, but you'll see it if you inspect.
yep. In particular, no, wrong one. In particular, I can build out a component that says that, which is great in Angular because now this component is in charge of rendering a page using this little snippet right here. Page, there it is, that's all it has to be. Here's your dynamic content that gets pulled in whenever it's asked. And it can, from a design pattern, really be a lot more simplified than open PHP, run a few functions, close PHP, append a couple more HTMLs, open PHP, run a couple more functions. That gets really messy. So that's why I'm more in favor of building front ends with JavaScript. But I've surveyed the same WordPress functionality, the JavaScript version, and it's been around for a few years, and it's more confiscated. It requires a lot more to set it up, get it running, piece it together. Or I could just use WordPress that I'm already going to be talking to get my data. I mean, JavaScript can even do your URL routing, right? If it hits here, load this component. If it goes to contact, load that component. If it's just anything else after that, try and figure out what it wants. Yes, ma'am.
So does Brainless WordPress require a JavaScript framework? Is that what you're saying? So you can't, this isn't something you can do with just like vanilla JS?
It does not require it, but, you know, writing in vanilla JS is like saying, I'm tired of my Maseratis, I want a Ferrari, so I'm going to go cast an engine block to start the process, right? Or you could just go get a Ferrari. You don't even have to use JavaScript. The point of it is in between your styles and your scripts and that little snippet, whatever you can think to load in there, it'll take over, and that's fine too. It's just the content you want to get out of it. The front end is in control of getting from WordPress. But WordPress also can initiate everything just enough that you can still use it.
So WordPress is just building a showcase. It's up to you what you put into the showcase.
Yeah, that's that HTML shell. That's the shell right there. Your header, your footer, and something else take the wheel. You build.
Same way you do it any other time with jQuery or whatever.
Yeah, you build your custom endpoints, and they will react appropriately whenever they're hit. Where's it at?
And you can basically use all the WordPress functionality you want.
Yeah, like here's one endpoint callback I have, get home, and it's just going to go through and the WordPress way figure out which of the pages has been titled as home. And then, there it is. Register your endpoint. And now that is an HTTP accessible endpoint that AJAX through any other language can hit and get the value back without having to rebuild the whole thing.
So what would be, in your mind, like a perfect use case for something like this? I mean, so I'm going to go build a website for my client. To me, that doesn't feel like a use case for where you're going with this. I mean, it could be.
Could be.
But
I feel like the perfect use case, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little bit sarcastic here. I have to apologize. Is when you want to do more than just websites. But within your scope doesn't mean mobile applications, right? The BI platform I built, I don't actually want anyone and everyone to just be able to download an app and use it. I want to be able to control who gets to it, who sees it, because it's a lot of private and sensitive information. And I also know that I work at WP Engine, and so maybe we should be the experts in WordPress, so I decided to build it on WordPress. And it's turned out to be a fantastic central location to pull in data from everywhere and also spit the data back out through a front end, an Angular front end. But it's still just a single destination, but widely dynamic for all of our employees, every department, every employee level access role. If you're a manager, you see this. If you're not a manager, you see that. It's just widely scalable. And fast to set up, I'm not going to lie. And cheaper, too, because we were looking at some other BI platforms, and that's just a lot of money. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Rob earlier mentioned kind of the three big JavaScript frameworks sort of competing right now. In your opinion, is one of them better suited to these approaches? Is there one that you recommend or see it being more of a place in the future? Or?
My personal favorite is Angular. React is very powerful, but let's also face it, React is really just the JavaScript library, and there's a lot of other tools you need in order to turn it into a framework functionality. That's why there's Preact, and I didn't even really keep up with all the other ones, but there's a lot. But it's good when you get it all set up. But then also, like C, you have to pre-compile it. My hope is that WordPress doesn't pick a single JavaScript framework. It will for the back end, which is great, and I've had a lot of talks with the people trying to make that decision, and I'm glad that their focus isn't on if we pick this, the entire community has to follow. Their focus is we want to pick it so that core development teams have a singular standard to work out of. But if in your plugin you want to use Angular for your admin menu, go for it. If you want to use Backbone, if you want to use JavaScript or jQuery, if you want to use, what is it, Moomba is an old JavaScript framework, something like that, go for it. I really don't want there to be a single JavaScript framework that the entire community only uses, because now we've definitely limited our ability to build more and dream big. But yes, my personal favorite's Angular. I'm a little fanboy.
Why is Angular your favorite?
I started with it, and it still makes the most sense. I've looked into the other ones, and while they have their strengths, I find that Angular is better for building out larger, more robust web apps than a 5-page website. Honestly, React is better at building a simple solution than Angular is. Angular does involve a lot of moving parts, but just my personal, the way I think seems to align better with Angular. So I don't in any way want to discredit any other framework, because there's been a lot of effort put into each of them for the right reasons. Just like I'm also a Bootstrap fan instead of all the other CSS frameworks. It stuck with me. All right. I'm here for the rest of the day and also tomorrow. If you guys really want to dig in, come chat with me. Thank you all.